A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin is a fantasy classic that I have neglected to read for years. I'm excited to have finally made my way through it and to review it on here today. I'm Steven, your favorite quadriplegic booktuber, and thank you for tuning in to Fantology Podcast /YouTube channel. If you want to talk with us more, let us know what book recommendations you have or your opinions on any of this stuff, you can do that on our Discord server. Invites are in the description below. Okay, so A Wizard of Earthsea, like I said, fantasy classic. It was written in 1968, 53 years ago, if my math is correct. And it's kind of contemporary. I mean, I know Lord of the Rings came out before then, but the styles are very similar. However, it's not nearly as epic in scope. It's much more of a zoomed-in personal narrative, although not a first person. And it's a shorter book. It's only about 200 pages long. There are several more entries in the series in the Earthsea cycle. There are 6 total compilations of short stories and individual works, and they've all been collected together into this nice book I have behind me. So check that out. And I believe each entry is, roughly like 200 pages or so. So if you got it all together, it'd be about, the size of a Sanderson epic fantasy. But they are shorter bites on their own, so definitely not intimidating if you're looking to jump in. Now, I will say it's not nearly as epic as modern fantasy. It's really just kind of the tale of this wizard, right, in this unique Earthsea environment as he grows. It's a coming-of-age tale as he defeats an enemy, and there's not a ton that actually happens, like no big epic battles or things like that. There is action, don't get me wrong, but a comparison to Lord of the Rings is kind of fair, but also kind of unfair, because you can't be expecting the same type of thing, but you can't expect the same type of narrative style. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that this book inspired my all-time favorite fantasy book, The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. There are several elements of A Wizard of Earthsea that you can directly see that Rothfuss picked up and put into his book, and he has said as much. Okay, so ratings for the book. Gonna keep this video a little bit shorter. So prose earns an 8 out of 10. It is very solid prose. It's very much old school. It's a lot of telling, not showing, so that may bug you if you're really into the new wave of fantasy. But if you can appreciate the classics like Lord of the Rings, and this is why I keep on making this comparison, because the storytelling style is very similar. And it doesn't help that the audiobook that I've listened to, I kind of read, listen at the same time. And so it doesn't help that the audiobook narrator is the same in A Wizard of Earthsea as in the Lord of the Rings, at least the version of Lord of the Rings that I have listened to in the past. So it definitely feels the same. Okay, the plot is only going to earn a 6 out of 10. It's a decent plot. It's kind of just like meandering through Ged, our hero's life. Each chapter, there's 10 or 11 chapters, kind of feels like a different short story. And then the whole book is like them all packaged together. Towards the end, it gets a little more cohesive where, the climax happens, etc. But overall, you could just kind of read a chapter and be like, okay, I got a little bit of an arc here in the chapter. Now, like I said, additionally, there's not a ton of epic action, although there are dragons and there are fights with dragons and there is magic used. So it's got all of the things that you'd want in an epic fantasy. However, there's no big, long, extended sequences of action. Okay, so characters are unfortunately only going to earn 5 out of 10. I don't think that any characters are really memorable. There's not a lot here that I would put into a character cage fight or anything like that you see on Twitter where you get a bunch of popular fantasy book characters mentioned. It's mostly just a zoomed in narrative on Ged, our wizard's life. There are some side characters that are interesting and well done, but overall you've only got 200 pages to spend here, and there's not a whole lot. Now, I will say I'm guessing fans of the series are going to push back and say that some characters are bigger, and I think that is probably fair. I've only read the first book, and I understand there is a lot of continuation for Ged's storyline, and then you get into some other characters that continue. So I think overall there's going to be some bigger characters from the entire Earthsea cycle, but from the first book that I have read, that's all I can review right now, I don't think the characters are super memorable. So setting gets a 7 out of 10. It's a really cool idea. And as you can guess from the title of the series and book, it's an Earthsea. It's a big archipelago of islands interspersed in this world made out of water, mostly. I like the idea. I think there's a lot of potential there, and I'm guessing it gets more explored in future books. However, in the first book only, I thought while it was a nice idea, I would have liked to see this setting really permeate the rest of culture and society. It's something that you see in the Cosme books a lot, and that's a tough comparison because those are some of the most popular books right now. But like in Roshar, in the Stormlight Archive, the fact that the setting is what it is and the storms ravage the land just perfuses everything else in society. Like buildings are constructed in certain ways in order to take advantage of this. And I didn't see the same level of commitment here to the Earthsea idea. It just kind of felt like a lot of cultures we're already familiar with slapped down in this new environment. And I don't think that's realistic. I think things would have changed if the entire world was just a bunch of islands. So I think while this is a cool idea, it's maybe a little bit like ahead of its time back in 68. I think now in 2021, these ideas of really unique settings have surpassed it. They're now more ingrained in the rest of the story. And so it's only getting a 7 out of 10, but it's hard to like look back at it in lenses of history, right? Because in 2021, it's maybe unfair to judge this book, which was written back in 68. So it's a little tough. However, just from like my impressions of the setting, I'm going 7 out of 10. Another 7 out of 10 for pacing. I thought throughout there was always something going on. However, sometimes I felt like it was too fast paced. Like one page would pass and then all of a sudden things had kind of radically changed, or we were just like moving past something that I thought was interesting. And I thought this book could have been longer and still really good. In fact, maybe better if I had more time to just kind of like sit with the characters and explore their settings and plot and etc. But it just moves so quickly at times, and then other times it was, you know, a little slower into the current plot. But especially like there's a time where he's at school, and I think that goes by so quickly, and I just wanted more of that. I wanted more of the nitty-gritty details, which is the inspiration that I'm really speaking of that Rothfuss draws upon in Name of the Wind. It's my favorite part of the Name of the Wind, and it's probably why I wanted more in Earthsea. So these ratings add up to a 6.5 out of 10. I'm giving that rating a +1 for Legacy because this is written in 68. As I've said multiple times, I think it's tough to judge a book with this whole historical lens thing, comparing it to the cool things that have, you know, that it has inspired, right? Like it is directly responsible for the things that I am knocking it down because it's not as good at, if you see what I'm saying. Like there are things from Stormlight Archive and Name of the Wind that I love that books like this inspired, and those things built upon. And so it's maybe unfair for me to then knock this one. That's why I'm giving it a +1. So 7.5 out of 10. Check out A Wizard of Earthsea. I will get to the rest of the cycle eventually. We have a busy reading schedule at Phantology, a lot of new releases coming down. If you want to follow us, you can do that at www.phantologybooks.com. You can support the show at patreon.com/phantologybooks. And please subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're trying to make a push for additional subscribers. Thanks for listening. See you next time.